Hi, and welcome to the next instalment of Clinker Chat. We are so excited to be here today at the Kayasand plant in Albion Park. I'm really pleased to be joined by Bram, who is the CEO of Kayasand, joining us all the way from New Zealand, and Frank, who's the National Sales Manager. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We're joining you today from Albion Park, as I mentioned, which is the land of the Yodi Yodi people. Very pleased to pay our respects to elders past and present. So can I start by asking you, what's the history of Kayasand? How did this come about?
The founder of Kayasand was Andy Lusty. He started talking to a guy called Dr. Kaya, who was developing a new technology for manufacturing a higher quality sand. And so they needed a solution to be able to make concrete without being dependent on natural sand. So Andy talked to Dr. Kaya, found out about this technology, the V7 technology, which is where they're combining sort of variation on the VSI crusher, new type of air screen, and actually able to produce a really nice quality manufactured sand. And so he got so excited about it that he left that role that he was working on there, started Kayasand, and that's how Kayasand started out.
So we have heard a lot about manufactured sands and the fact that they can perform far better than, say, natural sands. Can you tell me a little bit about the process that you have here and how you can create that really high quality sand product to suit different applications?
Natural sand is produced over thousands and thousands of years and broken down and polished and developed. So you've got a bit of a grading through. But our manufactured sand is literally manufactured in a quarry. So it'll be about a third to 50% actually of material is produced is crusher dust in a quarry, and that crusher dust is what we then transform into a manufactured sand. Now, the quality of the manufactured sand comes from things like your shape of the material, the grading of the material, the cleanliness of the material, so taking out all the really fine silts and clays, and probably most importantly, the consistency. We put a consistent product out, and it's all off one conveyor, one system.
So what does that mean for a concrete mix if you're using a manufactured sand over a natural sand?
Well, they can plan. It allows them to plan, and then during the planning and the design, there's even opportunities to reduce the amount of cement, because we make a stronger concrete with our sand. So there's benefits from emissions, benefits from cost, because a stronger concrete with less cement. I think also the beauty of it all is it's all done as a dry process. There's no water, and the complications that's attached to that.
So, as a layman, if I understand this correctly, a natural sand is a very smooth, round surface, which means that when you're putting those particles together, you're going to have a lot of gaps in between, and so you're going to need more of that filler substance, more of that cement to bind those particles together, as opposed to what you're producing, which has nice sharp angles, and so you're going to get much denser particle packing. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, so our shape's quite cuboidal, so it's got good sharp edges, rough edges, and allows everything to cement together. And then we've also got a good grading of fine, so we'll pack together for that controlled feature or design feature.
So at the moment, the concrete industry is sort of dependent on blending natural sands, and they also really use manufactured sands into concrete to try and get the optimum mix. What we're aiming to do is, how can we make the perfect concrete sand in one production run through? So what defines the perfect concrete sand? When we talk to concrete manufacturers, they say, as Frank said, shape, the sizing, the contamination controlling that, and consistency. And that's what we want to do here. That's what our plant's capable of, is producing that perfectly graded concrete sand. Benefits of that: you can make stronger concrete, so that means less cement, which means reduced emissions. So that's a wonderful story. As Frank said, you could save on you're not using water, so it's a dry process, and you're eliminating the need to the dependence on natural sand. So if you look at a quarry, traditionally crusher dust is seen as a sort of byproduct that you make as part of the crushing process. What we want to do is turn that around. Imagine if we could get to the point where crusher dust became the most profitable part of a quarry. You're producing a premium product that enables more sustainable building materials and creates much more economic and sustainability benefits for the quarries and the concrete industry.
which is an incredible story of circularity. So
Absolutely.
that's phenomenal.
Yeah. And it's a much more sustainable source of natural sand. Of concrete sand.
Yeah.
So even the filler material that we make, if that was also a driver material, a high valued material of different applications, it may have cementitious properties, it may be used for soil conditioning in agriculture, it might be used for carbon capture in different applications. So that also becomes a driver product. So the fine end, which would normally be a low value product, suddenly becomes the high value product that everyone's demanding.
That's what we're aiming for, is complete utilisation, so there's no waste.
So where would I find a Kayasand plant? What types of, we're here on a quarry site, where does this perfectly sit?
Yeah, that's the ideal application. So this plant that we've got here behind us is connected into their main crushing plant. The material's fed into our feed silo and fed through to create the product straight out, and that's the most sort of efficient configuration. The plant's fully autonomous. They just basically press the start button and it'll turn itself off when it's finished doing its job.
So our plant is the tail end in a process. It will be the last part of the process to finish off the material.
But there are other potential applications as well, processing recycled materials like glass, recycled concrete, and slag material. So we can produce a really high quality concrete sand from all those materials.
So tell me a little bit about the business model that you have. You sell the machinery, right, as opposed to what comes out of the machinery. So who would you be aiming to partner with?
So our main customers are the quarries. We sell or lease the machinery to the quarries to produce the product.
Fantastic.
So we can do a complete turnkey installation.
Which then creates, again, as you said, that new product stream, because you're taking those tailings and turning them into a really high value product.
Yeah, well, there are various ways of producing manufactured sand, and it typically involves sort of a post-processing step. This is a quite sophisticated approach where you're producing a really high quality product.
So you mentioned that this technology has been really widely adopted in places like Japan and China. How are you now seeing Australia adopting this technology?
So what we're seeing in Australia is, as we present it to different potential customers, they're getting quite excited about it, which is fantastic to see when they see the results and when we do trials, etc. Seeing the shape, seeing the gradation, seeing it all roll off a single conveyor in a single process really makes them quite excited. And I mean, I even had one customer, he had 2 jars of before and after, and his comment was, "Wow, this is the best sand I've ever seen." And yeah, that's quoting.
So as far as I understand, currently only about 20 to 55% of manufactured sand is effectively used. Why is that?
It all comes down to the quality of the manufactured sand. So it depends on what sort of processing, what sort of rock type you're using. There's a variety of things that influence how much manufactured sand you can use in concrete. And that comes down to those 4 main properties: the shape, the grading, the contamination level, and the consistency of the product. What we're aiming to do is enable a much higher replacement of natural sand by getting all of those things right. And that comes down to that sort of, what does it take to make the perfect manufactured sand? What does it look like? And that's what we're chasing.
And so can I understand a little bit more about how you actually achieve that with this plant? Because you were mentioning that it's an autonomous system and you can actually very carefully control the grading of the particles that are coming out. How is it that you're using your sieve technology and the aeration process to achieve those?
So our plant is made up of two major components, which are the Chemco components. It's a very unique VSI now to start with, and that VSI being different to others. A normal VSI will take a minus 55, 60 millimetre feed, but ours takes a minus 13 all-in feed. I don't know of any other VSI that does that. What it does is it's also very well suited to abrasive material. The screen is also extremely unique in its application. So it's a vibrating screen as well as an air classifying system. But the screen is so unique, you actually feed the screen on the discharge end, believe it or not, and then the material is blown up the screen and allowed to reel down as the screen vibrates. So you've got the benefits of an air classifier and a vibrating screen all happening at once. Now that whole system is in closed circuit with one another, and being in closed circuit, we can control the power draw on the VSI and the amount of recirc. and that gives us a very, very consistent product. So we can adjust the speed on the VSI, we can adjust the closed circuit rate, and that gives us the different gradings that the customer requires. And there are other adjustments through the plant, but they can be done
Incredible.
online.
It's interesting because people approach us and they're looking at how can we do multi-deck screening into fractions so that we can reblend it to get the target grading. But we don't need to do that. This machine produces the exact grading that you're looking for, and we can change the shape of that grading just by, some of it's just changing software changes in the plant. So the plant, once you've set it up, will produce a very consistent grading, but if we want to change the shape of that grading curve, we just change the recirculation rates and other settings on the plant to produce that. And that's something that we found in the industry.
So can you tell me a little bit about the comparison with, say, natural sand?
What we see is there's some you get a lot of variability in the quality of natural sand. I mean, for example, in New Zealand, we know of 2 situations where there's companies operating in very separate locations. To produce a 30 MPa concrete, they're using between 50 and 70% less cement in one location compared to the other. So that's like potentially a 20% cement savings that they could achieve just by getting that quality right. What we want to do is enable quarries to, anywhere there's a quarry, put one of these plants in and you can produce that sort of level of quality of sand anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's the opportunity that we've got.
Yeah.
So that's why we're chasing that potential. Can we get to the point where we could reduce the cement and concrete by 20%?
Which has a huge sustainability saving.
Exactly, it's that emissions reduction potential.
Yeah.
There's a lot of focus in the industry all over the world on supplementary cementitious materials, which is great. But what we want to provoke is more of a conversation about getting that sand grading right. We see a few people talking about that, but we see there's a lot more potential for achieving cement savings by getting the quality of that sand right.
It's a very holistic look at the decarbonisation roadmap for the concrete sector, because we do talk a lot about cement reduction in our sector, but we're not necessarily talking about what are the ways to achieve that outside, say, a supplementary cementitious material. And so what you're bringing in is an alternative, which is let's think about the sand and the aggregate quality and how we get that denser particle packing so that we don't need to use quite as much cement.
I agree. I think they've got to move through that, various documents that talk about that whole supply chain and looking at that. Supplementary cementitious materials are a good place to start, but they're going to have to look further in, and that's where the quality of the sand, quality of the aggregates. We talk to the concrete guys time and again, and they tell us that can have a big impact.
So can I ask then about maybe the barriers and the challenges? What would you say are some of the barriers to bringing a manufactured sand to market?
There's a perception around the quality of manufactured sand and the downsides of using manufactured sand in concrete. Often that's because people are not controlling those variables: shape, grading, contamination and consistency. And so what we want to do is sort of push past that barrier and say, hey, manufactured sand can be better than natural sand in a lot of applications, and you can completely replace natural sand if you want to in your concrete. And but you've got to get the quality right, and that's what we're enabling people to do.
Would you say that we have a policy and a standards and procurement environment which allows for that adoption of higher levels of manufactured sand?
Yes, I mean, it's at the moment, manufactured sand's already used extensively in concrete. We're just basically enabling you to use it at a much higher ratio, much better replacements for natural sand. Well, what we're seeing, actually, with a much greater focus on sustainability, and particularly with organisations starting to publish the amount of carbon dioxide that is produced in making their concrete, we're actually seeing that the industry is having to chase harder and harder to find those cement savings, and that's what's driving them to be more and more open to changing the way they do things and looking at the opportunity to create a better quality manufactured sand.
We just had a customer using our technology tell us that they've just increased the amount of Kayasand into the manufactured sand by 20%.
Wow.
So just today.
Just by continuing to innovate.
So it brings us to a really important question, particularly for us here at SmartCrete Cooperative Research Centre. What do you see as the role for research and development in helping to enhance the manufactured sand sector?
Yeah, well, certainly we're always looking to do more R&D, more to show how the sand can be used more effectively and those sorts of things. Particularly, it's about the sort of application side. How do you, for each different site, there's different rock types in that, and how do you apply it most effectively to meet the expectations of that market around the performance of the concrete. This technology is already really well established. There's over 250 of these plants across Asia, so it's already used extensively. I mean, in Japan they're using it all the time for high strength concrete and all sorts of different applications. Probably the more exciting opportunity, or the biggest opportunity for us around R&D is around the use of the filler. If you look at other processes, you don't produce the same quality or accuracy of that sort of fine, ultra-fine product that we capture here. And we're seeing a variety of applications opening up for that. And so things like, for example, soil conditioning products, we're seeing it, people using it into asphalt dust to meet the highway specs and those sorts of things. People are using it in geopolymer, looking to activate it. There's a whole range of different things, and we think by capturing this material in large quantities, it actually opens up a whole new market opportunity where previously with other technologies you aren't able to utilise. And so it's quite an exciting opportunity, and that's what gets us towards that goal of sort of zero waste, where you're utilising all of the product that's going into the primary crusher. It's all coming out the end and we're able to use it, sell it all.
And not only is it just capturing it, we're capturing it dry so you can utilise it for other applications. It's much easier to handle.
So tell me, what can we expect from Kayasand over the next 10 years?
What we're looking to do is, as I said earlier, if you look at the -7mm sort of size within a quarry, that's seen as a kind of inconvenient byproduct of the production, and they're often looking, how do we process it just to sell it? What we want to do is, if we could do that effectively, if we can be successful, quarries may start to see that side of what they're doing as actually the more profitable part, where they're turning it not from a waste byproduct into a premium product that actually, as I said, enables you to produce a more sustainable construction material at the same time as it's got more favourable economics compared to, so it makes the quarry more profitable. And then going a step beyond that and saying how utilising the filler effectively as well, so that you can get to that zero waste target. And then enabling the quarry to go, in addition to that, making the quarry be able to go completely dry in terms of its processing. You go into a lot of quarries and where they're using a lot of water for washing aggregate, and that means you've got huge settling ponds and the various sort of, things that go along with processing that. If we can enable those processes to go dry, which we believe we've got the technology to do that, then you could actually eliminate that huge cost for quarries and the huge amount of space that they take up. So there's a lot of different potential benefits here, in addition to creating a more sustainable sand for the construction industry.
And as you travel around from quarry to quarry, and I've seen this through my whole career, there's potentially millions of tonnes of crusher dust stockpiled all over. Just imagine being able to utilise that and instead of having that money tied up in a stockpile, a low valued stockpile, adding value to it.
So we should expect to see a Kayasand plant attached to every quarry in Australia sometime in the future.
We'd certainly like to create an opportunity where every concrete plant can access a high quality manufactured sand nearby to where they're located, without being dependent on the sort of various challenges that go along with getting resource consents around natural sands. It's getting harder and harder to source natural sands in a lot of applications. That's our goal. We want to basically unlock an alternative for the industry so they can get a much more predictable supply chain for a better quality sand.
Which meets their specific demands as well.
Exactly.
Sounds,
Yeah, exactly. So we're able to vary the product properties depending on what the customer wants. We're happy to try new gradings, new processes to try and meet what the customer needs. When we ask people from the industry, from concrete industry, I sat down with a guy the other day, and the first question I asked him is, what do you want from your sand? And he said, I want shape, I want the size and the grading to get that packing density down so that it's perfectly packed and you minimise the amount of cement that you use. I want contamination controlled, minimised, so you're removing the clays and other things that can affect the performance of concrete. And most importantly, the most important common theme that we get all the time is consistency, producing the same material day in, month out. And that's what this plant can do. You don't have to change settings all the time to tune it or anything like that. Once you've set it up, it will produce the same very consistent grading over from quite a relatively simple process. So that's the key that we're chasing. And ultimately, as I said, we want to get to that point of where the sand production at quarries moves from being a sort of inconvenient byproduct to being a premium product that actually can potentially become the most profitable part of the quarry operation.
So the concrete batching facilities really need to come here, test out your product, see what it's like right now, and if it's not the perfect sand, then work with you to change some of the settings to create a more perfect sand
Absolutely.
for their particular mix.
Yeah, every quarry is saying, well, okay, that might work, but what about my material?
Yes.
We've run so many materials through the plants, and there's across Japan and China, so many different aggregate types. We've sent material up to Japan. It just works every time in terms of producing the target grading that you're looking for. And the concrete results, we're seeing consistent cement savings and consistently able to significantly outperform other manufactured sands in terms of replacing natural sand. And it's all from a dry process, and a fully autonomous process as well. So there's a range of benefits and boxes that we tick in terms of kind of issues that quarries and concrete industry want to have addressed.
Well, Bram, Frank, it has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining SmartCrete on Clinker Chat. Now, I can't wait to go and get my hands into some of your beautiful, beautiful products. But thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.